Thank you. So this technical difficulties seem to be the word of the day, and Pokemon Go is the other word of the day. So we weren't able to miracast this, but trust me, I'm seeing the most amazing demonstration that you've ever seen before. What I can do is maybe say, my camera, take photo. So I will send that to everybody if they want to see it at the end. It is like I said earlier, if you saw my panel discussion, a hands-free Android tablet that I'm wearing right now. In every way, shape, and form, Android 6.0. And you can see the power of it because I'm completely hands-free. So it's an industrial-grade, military-spec, rugged device that's intended purpose is for oil and gas, aviation, and other sorts of enterprise applications. So why do I have Pokemon Go up here? Well, one is I've heard it mentioned, I think, 27 times in the last day. The other reason is I have a question, and I didn't ask this question to anyone. Is this a AR game? How many people say this is an augmented reality game? Okay. How many people say it's a game that utilizes augmented reality? Right. And I think it's an important question, the order in which I name those two things. Because if you talk to a 19 and a 17-year-old, which I have two at home that have played this game, they tell me they turn off the augmented reality because it drains their battery, and it's too hard to catch the Pokemon when it's in augmented reality mode. So they don't even utilize it, augmented reality. So it's interesting because when John set out to make this game, he didn't think, I need to make an augmented reality game. He thought, I need to make a game where I can create these Pokemon capture people that are out in the real world, running around, finding Pokemon and capturing them, and that's the game that I want to construct. And then along the way, he said, you know, it'd be good if it was like see-through and we could do the augmented reality, but quite frankly speaking, it's not even that good of augmented reality. I mean, it's using a GPS locator. It's, you know, everyone in this room probably knows and can do a lot better when it comes to augmented reality. So it's very interesting now. It's become the poster child for augmented reality because it's ubiquitized the name. So everybody's actually heard of the word augmented reality, which before this, a large portion of the population never even still heard of that term. So I think it's done a lot of good work, but now I want to take that same logic and apply it to enterprise, okay? Of all my years of enterprise work and aerospace and everything else like that, I obtained a black belt in Six Sigma. And I've never once gone into a factory or facility and said, okay, I'm here as the Six Sigma guy. Where can I do a gauge R&R? Show me where you're testing something. I need to use a gauge R&R to go help you out. But that's what's going on in a lot of cases in enterprise. We're going in and saying, hey, I'm an augmented reality provider, and so I'm here to find augmented reality. I would challenge the audience that's dealing in enterprise to think broader. Think about the application of productivity. Think about the application of augmented reality, as Jim Heppelmann said, as the canvas to this thing called the Industrial Internet of Things or Industry 4.0. But not the only canvas. Quite frankly, I would prefer still to this day on my iPad to read a document versus looking at it in a translucent type of a format floating in the air in a HoloLens. That's my own personal preference, and most of the people I talk to agree with me. So there's the right tool for the right job, and augmented reality is certainly the right tool for the next generation as we're going forward. But to get there, there's a chasm that we need to cross. And we're not going to get there quicker by trying to shove augmented reality into places that it doesn't belong. What we're going to do is just spoil ourselves. So that's kind of the theme, and I'll give you some screenshots since we couldn't miracast this. And one plug before I forget. On the 31st of January, we're having an event in San Carlos, just 10 minutes south of SFO. And if anybody wants to attend that event, it'll be at a live working brewery. And we will have beer at the end of the day. But all the demonstrations are much better seen with tanks and valves and gauges versus on this stage. So it'll be a really cool event, and I encourage everyone to reach out, and we'll get you on board and get you to see it. So why are we even caring? I mean, everybody only builds these things for consumers because it's the next iPhone, right? So why do I care about the industrial market and the enterprise market? Well, I believe the enterprise market is sorely undervalued and under-anticipated at how big a wearable iPhone for the industrial Internet of Things could be. And this is just heavy industry that we're calculating here, just a small fraction of what can actually, every time I'm in the Uber car, and I asked the Uber driver what they do, one guy told me he was a DJ, and I said, well, this is what I do. And he goes, wow, man, I can actually put that on my head, do my song, see my next tracks, fill my audience the whole time I'm up there on stage doing it without having to do this. I said, yeah, that's true. So every time I talk to someone, a McDonald's worker or this or that, I think of a new application, something else that could be applied to this type of a use case or this type of a paradigm. This is the industrial Internet of Things today, okay? So when you think of all this data that great PTC and Predix and all this, this is what it looks like today. And generally, all of that stuff isn't obviously in that room, it's out in a plant somewhere. And the conduit of conveyance of information to the worker is this, a two-way Motorola radio. So all of that goodness through this little pipe called a Motorola two-way radio. When I was talking to Glenn, Glenn said to me, you know, we're going to do all this condition-based monitoring, we're going to do statistical data, and we're going to do predictions and this and that and everything else like that. And I said, well, that's not new. I was a Navy nuclear engineer, and we have material history books, and we've had material history books for years and years and years. For 50 years, we've been taking and tracking material history. But as a division officer, those material history books were up on my division officer's shelf, and the only time we pulled one out is when something broke, and we said, oh, shoot, we should have saw that coming. And so for that not to be now the next paradigm, we can't keep that information trapped in the cloud. It has to be delivered, and I do believe a good canvas to deliver it is augmented reality because it's everywhere. You saw how big it was, and it's very location specific. Where you need to put that information, where you need to see that. If I'm in front of a pump, I want to see the pump discharge pressure. If I'm in front of a boiler, I want to see the level of the boiler and the temperature of the boiler. So if this is all everybody's convinced, this crowd probably is, what are the impediments? Well, I kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier about enterprise not being like consumer. And we get consumer on the brain. We say we're going to get the next great gadget out there. We're going to people lined up. They're going to just, it's going to be awesome. And we're going to say this and that. But enterprise moves slower and more deliberately. And there are issues that we're not really fully embracing. And I had another speech I did a while ago, and I asked the audience, have you heard of ANSI 89.1, ANSI 87.1, MIL Standard 810.16g? Have you heard of ATEX Zone 1, Division 1? And nobody knew any of that stuff. And I said, well, you guys, if you're thinking about designing a system for enterprise, you got to start with requirements. And those are the requirements that are required for anything to be brought into a shipyard, for example. And these are a list of the other issues that I see with current augmented reality glasses on markets. You see they all have sunglasses, hard to use outdoors. It's not bright enough. It doesn't have a black background. Reduction in peripheral vision, trip hazards, that sort of thing. Safety glasses form factor. You either have to design the safety glasses in or it has to be compatible with safety glasses and hard helmets and other different safety equipment like that. Virtual image focus. We heard someone else, I forget one of the professors that was on a panel talk about this, having to look at 3 feet and then 12 feet and then 2 feet. You know, that focal distance hasn't been dialed in yet. And then software disruption, the idea of authoring all of this content out there, which PTC will absolutely do a great deal of advances towards. But someone told me that 3 years ago, they digitized all the written information on a C-130, just 3 years ago. And it took them that long because it's hard. There's a lot of information, and to scale rapidly is going not to, I mean, it's not going to happen in a year. So there's two primary, I'm an architect, I'm a system engineer, I worked at Raytheon for 8 years, and there's two things that any DoD contractor will ask you about at the beginning of a contract, and it's suitability and capability. Now I put scalability up here, I know, but suitability and capability is what you start to architect a device by thinking about. And these are kind of, in my world, the definitions of those two things. And so when I gear everything in this space, I try to design a system that would be in the upper right corner of being hyper-scalable, AKA leveraging the work that's been done with an Android tablet, and hyper-suitable, meaning that in industry, climbing towers, doing this sort of thing, you want your hands free. And of course, it's my device is the suitable and scalable one. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have this job if I didn't say this. And here's an idea of augmented reality where I see it going in phase 1, okay? Everybody's had the Yelp app or a Starbucks app. Contextual just placement of information in a big refinery like that. Could be dozens more than you even see on here, and all these little indicators at the bottom is a sample of the kind of user interface that you could see working with basic augmented reality. But beyond this, I've got documents that I need to see. I've got folks that are available to help me out. I've got some gauges and some pressure and some level and some trend data. Here's another widget type of a thing that we could do. Call these guys. This guy calls up, sees what I'm seeing, helps me get through some difficult maintenance activity. All of these are applications in the quiver. These are all arrows in the quiver of the iPhone, of the industrial Internet of Things. So it isn't just augmented reality, although augmented reality is appropriate for that first use case that I started with. So I think this is something that would be really neat. And then there are applications and other application augmented reality. I didn't list them here, but even in the case of this guy, he could be circling little pieces and stuff like that, and that could be affixed by computer vision to the thing that you're looking at. So you can use two-dimensional augmented reality to convey a whole lot of value. So going back to the beginning, the Pokemon Go, take the lesson that I hopefully conveyed to you about don't design an augmented reality game. Set out to design a really, really good game, and if you happen to say, hey, augmented reality works, incorporate it. The same is true with enterprise. Don't go into an enterprise looking for augmented reality. Find the places where augmented reality works and apply it to your job. Okay? Thank you very much.